It's the 90 shots, 60 of which hit him. Did all the officers believe he was a threat, which could explain why all fired? Or did the officers fire because they heard other officers firing? Which could be a potential problem. Regardless, everyone can agree in retrospect that 60 shots didn't need to be fired. The real question is exactly why that happened. What did they believe at the time? The 8 officers are all on paid leave now, per protocol, and the police union says they've all been cooperating with the investigation. The chief says they'll get answers.
When an officer makes the most critical decision in his or her life as a police officer, doesn't matter where in the country this happens, when they make that most critical decision to point their firearm at another human being and pull the trigger, they've got to be ready to explain why they did what they did. They need to be able to articulate what specific threats they were facing, and that goes for every round that goes down the barrel of their gun.
Meanwhile, Akron has had some peaceful protests and also some rioting, especially last week after the body cam footage was released, which resulted in dozens arrested and some downtown Akron property damage. So let's have a balanced conversation about this. Joining me now is Lance LaRusso, former law enforcement officer turned attorney. He's been a use of force instructor for nearly 30 years and has represented over 100 officers. And Jason Nichols, political analyst, columnist, senior lecturer of African American Studies at the University of Maryland. Thank you both for coming on the program. Appreciate it. All right, Lance, let me start with you. People obviously are going to ask about 60 shots. What could possibly be the explanation or defense for something like that happening?
Well, the first thing you have is officers don't count the shots they fire at the scene. It would be ludicrous to ask them to do that. They see a threat, they shoot, and then it takes time to start shooting, it takes time to stop shooting. So if you have 8 officers who fired 11 times apiece at a threat that they believed was present, that would lend itself to close to 90 shots. Those 90 shots were probably fired in 3 seconds. And the fact that the officers all fired simultaneously really indicates to me that they all saw something that led them to believe that this man presented a deadly threat. In the situation where you have the gun being fired from inside the car, you have an extended chase where somebody is clearly disobeying the law and trying to flee, and then there's a gunshot fired, any reasonable officer would believe that the person who got out of the car and continued their unlawful resistance might reasonably be armed. At that point, when the person does something, if he does something, it's very dark, it's hard to see, we're gonna have to hear from these officers. If he does something to indicate that he may be armed or may be trying to use that firearm against them, you would expect every officer there to use deadly force to protect themselves and the other officers.
And as a legal matter, what the chief said there is correct, right? They're going to have to literally, though, justify each and every shot.
Well, they do have to justify each and every shot. Here's an interesting point about that. When we look at the each and every shot, when you have officers that are shooting, as I said, it takes time to start shooting and time to stop shooting. But people underestimate how quickly an officer, especially an officer under stress, will shoot. So John Hinckley Jr. shot 6 shots in 1.1 seconds with no firearms training. So you would expect that these officers who are concerned for their lives, somebody has been shooting, whether they're shooting at them, whether they're shooting at the public, that they would shoot very, very quickly when they perceived a threat. And their reasonable belief is what's going to control.
Let me ask Jason about, Jason, how significant do you think it is that a shot was apparently fired from the car? Let's assume for a moment that's true, even though the family does dispute it.
Well, I would agree with my counterpart there that the perception that he may be armed and dangerous is important. You have to protect the public. From what we see from the body cam footage during the chase, I think that, that could be something that's a little more debatable than perhaps is being presented right now. But the fact that he was armed does change the dynamic. It does make police more on guard, and they have to, protect the public and themselves. And so I would agree there that is significant.
So do you think, though, that there should be more of a waiting game here in terms of figuring out what happened before people are rushing to judge the officers about this, or do you think that the body cam tells the story?
I think well, just in general, I think there needs to be transparency. We've seen around the country, for example, the case of Ronald Green, where it takes 2 years to get the body cam footage, and then we see he was beaten to death with blunt objects by police officers. There are other cases around the country where it's taken a long time. And so the public doesn't trust police officers. And that is something that if you have an honest police executive, and I know quite a few of them who are honest people, they say in some cases, there have been a lot of situations where we haven't earned the public trust. So when the public doesn't trust you, they react immediately. They think that you're hiding something. They think you're not doing what you need to be doing. And so you don't get the benefit of the doubt. And so I think in cases of law enforcement across the country, if they want that benefit of the doubt, they need to build relationships and they need to make better.
Okay, but except in this case, the riots occurred after the body cam was released, right? And again, I'm just asking the question, right? I'm asking you, do you think that the body cam is the end of the inquiry? Because it does sound like, you still have questions that you want answered, right? And that you are willing to give some time here. Every time I even ask this question, I get destroyed on Twitter for even asking. How can you ask the question? We've seen the body cam and we know that there were 60 shots. And as I said before, I'm not going to defend 60 shots, but I would think, and it sounds like you agree, that there are still questions that need to be answered before we jump to conclusions.
Yeah, I think body cams are not perfect. I think a lot of times we think that body cams tell the entire story, and sometimes they don't. But I'll remain at the same point that I made, that I think people don't trust law enforcement across the country because of some of the decisions. Well, I would say the communities that we're talking about, the communities who are outraged, the communities who saw what happened to George Floyd and Ronald Green, and they are the ones, and I would say they're African American and Latino communities. They're the ones who have sometimes experienced some of the abuses by law enforcement. And so I think that there needs to be an effort to build better relationships.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But I think it is critical that in important cases that we allow the process to work and to give it time before we sort of have wars in our social media, et cetera, for asking questions about an important case like this, which is all we're trying to do here. Because I am making zero judgments here. Jason Nichols and Lance LaRusso, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.